I'm really hoping that 2019 proves to be at least a better year for movies than 2018, which I considered quite underwhelming. But anyway, here are my top 10 most anticipated films of 2019. Number 10 would be a movie called Uncut Gems. This is being described as a crime drama comedy, and it stars Adam Sandler. Now, before you jump to conclusions, whenever I hear that Adam Sandler is going to star in another movie, I'm usually extremely upset and completely uninterested because his films have basically just been total garbage for years and years now. But this is fortunately not a Happy Madison production. Also, every time he seems to be in a serious film, they're often quite good, as is his performances, specifically in Punch Drunk Love. What makes seeing this film even more of an anticipation to me is that it's going to be directed by the Safdie brothers, who were the creators of a movie a few years back called Good Time, which I absolutely loved and was one of my 5 favorite films of the year in which it was released. For those reasons, I'm very curious about this project. Number 9 is a movie called The Lighthouse. And speaking of Good Time, that film starred Robert Pattinson, the guy from Twilight, in a performance that truly took me by surprise in a very positive way. It gave off the vibe that he was serious about acting and wanted to shed his pretty boy teeny bopper image, and he gave a gritty and brilliant performance in that film. Turns out he's one of the stars in this film, which is probably going to be a dark and thrilling horror-ish movie that also stars the always great Willem Dafoe. To make things even more interesting to me, this film is from the director of The Witch, which I feel to be one of the greatest of all modern horror films. I was very curious to see what Robert Pattinson's next film would be, as well as what the director of The Witch's next film would be, and lo and behold, they would converge together in one film, The Lighthouse, coming out in 2019. For those reasons, I'm extremely excited for this. This might sound silly, but my number 8 most anticipated film of 2019 is Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. I've been a huge Kevin Smith fan since I was like 9 years old or something. I loved the Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back film, which I saw in theaters when I was not yet even a teenager. And I'm very curious to see what Kevin Smith will do with these 2 iconic characters now that they're basically in their 50s. It might go either way. Lately, his films have been so unlike him and honestly rather disappointing, and it might feel really awkward seeing 2 middle-aged guys still making wee, dick, and fart jokes. But then again, it might be a return to form of sorts for the great Kevin Smith. The reason I'm anticipating this film so much isn't because I necessarily have a lot of faith in it or think that it's going to be great. I'm just so curious to find out if it works, and how well it works, and how funny it is, if at all. I'm very curious. My number 7 pick for my most anticipated film of 2019 is Jordan Peele's Us. Jordan Peele completely floored me with Get Out, which I deem a masterpiece of horror. The biggest shock about Get Out was the fact that Jordan Peele, of all people, made such an effective, strong, and stylish a film as Get Out. This is his follow-up film, and it's also going to be a creepy and likely smart horror film, and because of that alone, I'm eagerly anticipating this film. There's a lot of pressure on him writing on this film. Was Peele just a fluke, or is he going to establish himself as a more than reliable horror and thriller filmmaker? I loved his first film, and the trailers for this film are certainly getting me excited. Fortunately, I don't have to wait too long to see it and find out how it holds up. It's coming out in March. Cannot wait to see it, and I hope it's really, really good. At number 6 is Toy Story 4. The Toy Story films are rare and precious films that seem to only get better and better. In my opinion, however, Toy Story 2 was not quite as good as the first, but Toy Story 3 was better than all of them, maybe even all of them combined, and might even be my all-time pick for the best film of the year in which it was released. I absolutely loved that movie. The Toy Story films are always so especially well-written, so especially suspenseful, and so especially emotional to me, compared to most other Pixar greats. The reason I want to see this film so badly is because I'm never let down by the Toy Story sequels, which is almost an impossible thing to do, given the levels of narrative greatness and technical quality achieved in each and every one of them. The teaser trailer doesn't really have me all that excited, but I'm always pleasantly surprised by the Toy Story films, and I'm eagerly anticipating this 4th installment. My number 5 pick for the most anticipated films of the year 2019 is Joker. I'm honestly sick and tired of superhero movies these days. There are too many per year, or even per month, and they tend to all feel the same and run together for the most part, in my opinion. But when you put the name Martin Scorsese into one of them, the name Joaquin Phoenix into the same one, the name Robert De Niro into the same one, and then you find out that it's a solo film focusing on the Joker, I cannot help but be extremely intrigued by that concept. I am hoping that the Joker is portrayed as a Travis Bickle from Taxi Driver type, a sociopath, a psycho in the streets of sorts. When I heard a solo movie about a villain was being made, starring the great Tom Hardy playing Venom, I was so indescribably happy. Then I saw it, and I lost all faith in Hollywood. For the love of God, 2019 Joker movie, please do not be what Venom was. Even if it is, I have to see this movie, with those names involved. Coming in at number 4 would be Star Wars Episode 9. I'm a big fan of the Star Wars films, and I have been ever since I was a small child. Regarding this new trilogy, I thought that The Force Awakens was excellent. I had a fantastic time, and for the most part, I was extremely pleased, both as a Star Wars fan and as a film critic. Then Rian Johnson bent over and took a massive dump and shipped it to theaters entitled The Last Jedi. It was terrible. Well, it wasn't terrible, but it was so unlike a Star Wars movie. It ruined a lot of the mythology, and it was interjected with bullshit current politics that felt so unnecessary and even narratively out of place. I'm extremely curious to see if J.J. Abrams can salvage his initial vision from the treacherous Rian Johnson and tyrannical Emperor Kathleen Kennedy. I guess we'll see, but either way, I really want to find out. Coming in at number 3 would be Avengers Endgame. I was never a huge fan of comic book movies, superhero movies, DCEU movies, MCU movies, or even Avengers movies. But after I saw Infinity War, it just so happened to engage me so much that I now feel like I just need to find out how all of this stuff is going to conclude. It left me on such a cliffhanger of curiosity for its sequel, which is this film, that I just need to know. How are the fallen heroes going to resurrect, if they do? How will Thanos be defeated? Who will do it? And how will it all go down? I must know. This last one, Infinity War, set up something extremely interesting and unique, and only Endgame will be able to tie it all up. There's a lot resting on this film's shoulders, and I just need to find out. Number 2 most anticipated film of the year 2019 is The Irishman. Martin Scorsese. Gangsters. Al Pacino in his first ever collaboration with Scorsese. Robert De Niro. Joe Pesci. Harvey Keitel. What else do I have to say? You've probably guessed it by now. I'm assuming, if you know anything about me, I guess, or my taste in movies and who my favorite living filmmakers are. But the number 1 most anticipated film of 2019 is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Whenever I learn of a Quentin Tarantino film being released in a certain year, that's often, if not always, my most anticipated film of the year. From what I've heard, this will be a more realistic and grounded film than his previous films, basically starting with Kill Bill. He's even gone on record saying that it's his closest film in tone to Pulp Fiction since Pulp Fiction, which immediately gets my hopes raised to the stars. It has an incredible all-star cast, and I've heard nothing the least bit alarming or negative from any source close to its production. I simply cannot wait for this film. Tarantino always gets my hopes up, and then ends up surprising me by surpassing them in ways I did not see coming. I cannot wait to see this movie, and it is my number 1 most anticipated film of 2019.